Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today to learn more about the Prominence-to-Preeminence STEM Targeted Initiatives Fund. We are very excited about this new opportunity. I look forward to hopefully giving you some context around the request for proposals, and then Liz and I will answer questions towards the end of this webinar. One of the key initiatives in the 2030 plan is Pathways to Research Preeminence. The overarching goal of this initiative is not preeminence for its own sake, but to contribute knowledge that will address major societal challenges and opportunities. In order to move this key initiative forward, we are investing $15 million in the P2PE STEM Targeted Initiatives Fund and inviting proposals. In the coming months and years, we will pursue different ways of advancing our research ambitions. This is one of many steps we expect to take to support our research and scholarship in these key focus areas. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Provost Liz McGill, and I would invite Liz to say a few words before we get started on the solicitation itself. Liz?
Thanks, Ram. It's great to be here, and I'm looking in the participant group. Nice to see so many friends and great researchers show up, and looking forward to hearing your questions. As it said in the chat, if you don't mind putting your questions in the Q&A, I think it will be easier for us to answer them. I'm just happy to be here and excited. We're going to try this. Ram is about to explain that this is different than anything we've done before, attempting to capture the great energy one gets from energizing principal investigators, and then trying to have that coordinated around the strategic plan and school leadership agenda items. So we'll see. I think it's exciting. And the other thing I'd emphasize is this is a first step, and we are working on additional investments in the research areas that will be of a slightly larger scale, and you'll hear more about that later in the coming months or so. But I'm going to just turn it back to Ram. Delighted to be here, and look forward to hearing your questions.
Robert, thank you. Thank you, Liz. Let me, before we go forward, again, I want to repeat, if you have questions, please post them in the Q&A box, not in the chat. Then we can address as many as we possibly can. And if we can't in the time allocated, we will actually answer them after the webinar. Let me briefly explain the core elements of the solicitation and how it differs from other solicitations in the past, as Liz said, that we are trying here. And then we'll address your questions. Let me share my screen. Okay, hope all of you can see the slide, the beautiful grounds, just amazes me. The first, an overview. So this solicitation is about providing necessary resources to advance initiatives that you will propose that we can move, not just make contributions to it, that actually can move from a level of prominence or significance that we have right now to preeminent status of really well known. That's what preeminence would mean in the focus areas that we have identified. Essentially, by this coordinated approach, we intend to accelerate solutions to societal problems. And as you know, the topics that we have are built on UVA strengths already. And through a collaborative interdisciplinary team building, we can address some of the initiatives that you will propose. The proposals in this solicitation are expected to be STEM-centric, but it does not mean that non-STEM disciplines are disallowed. They can actually be included if you can effectively make a case for advancing the research in the portfolio of projects that you would consider. And a couple of important changes that we want to let you know. Given the structure, the coordination needed, there were requests from associate deans and others about the deadline. So we have actually moved the deadline for the initial deadline it was May 17th to May 31st. and final deadline of the proposal to June 30th. So that really gives you one extra month to really get this going and coordinated. Now, in order to differentiate what is new here, so I want to remind all of us understand this, but I thought it'll make sense to articulate what a conventional project-based seed funding mechanism looks like. So we have done this before at UVA and at other institutions. Typically, there's a solicitation and faculty groups will propose ideas, fairly narrow in scope on, and it may be a new idea, narrow in scope, a well-defined problem and a method to solving the problem with an appropriate budget. So these are not necessarily large-scale problems to make impact beyond an individual lab or PI's excellence or the students that work on it. And this is partly because the funding is fairly limited. It's $100,000 or less, or small-scale funding. The Dean's Office provides an endorsement once you have proposed the idea, the method, and people who will participate in that and have a budget. The Dean's Office provides endorsement on for the proposal, and you get an award. And typically what, at least in my experience, I've seen is clearly people work hard, publish the results, they write grants, they receive some grants successful, and students are impacted, graduated, and that's typically where several of these project-based seed funding mechanisms end. They're not necessarily aligned with key focus areas because this is literally individual ideas that can come up for exploration. And this is not scalable for significant impact because of lack of critical mass and coordination of ideas that are needed to move the solution of a large-scale topic. So now with this, let me contrast what is different about the solicitation. First, you notice that the budget allocation, 2 to 5 awards, $15 million, and an individual ask can be as large as $10 million. So this is clearly not a strict seed funding to run a project. It's not project-based. There's a thematic focus needed. Again, if you look at a larger scale, we have the key areas. We have Digital Technology Society, precision medicine. They're very large. So what the intent here is a theme that fits under these topics, or maybe it crosscuts a couple of topics, sufficiently large in scope so that when you have a critical mass of output from your work, collective work, that there will be reasonable completeness to solutions to a narrow scope of a problem under this big umbrella. Still, it is large, that we will have an impact on society. That's the size and scale issue. Now, as you do this, you have an opportunity to assess. So this is, again, thinking big beyond your current capabilities. The goal is to identify the theme and see where we stand and what are the gaps. There may be gaps in talent that is needed, resources that are needed, infrastructure, that are necessary for pursuing that idea meaningfully in order to nationally be competitive as a team on this particular theme that you'll be proposing. Now, if you had talent deficit that you think there is a specialist in a certain area needed, or you need to hire somebody in maybe across schools, whatnot. If a talent is needed, then, as you know, talent and large-scale infrastructure support need to be collaboratively developed with the deans, because these are faculty hiring is a dean function. So we're not expecting that this group will actually go out and hire faculty. We expect that you will identify the need and you will coordinate with the dean's offices involved in your project and see how best you can construct this so you get that hiring done. And again, large-scale infrastructure, you may propose a piece of equipment, but the dean's office has a lot to contribute in terms of space, in terms of maintenance, other elements that they have to balance. So that's why this has to be a collaborative effort as you develop this proposal. And so from the perspective of a vision for this program, this is an approach to direct the resources towards strategic focus areas. So we think on the theme that will advance our strategic focus areas, find where we need to invest in order to make this happen. So in this sense, This is different from the previous version that we are all familiar with. You don't construct a budget and faculty hiring, all of these, and then present it to deans for a support letter. That's not it at all. Once you identify the gaps and how the funding mechanisms would work in terms of faculty hiring, et cetera, that a dean's office should be able to help you. And the budgeting is collaborative. So in other words, you could think about collaboratively, the dean's office could think about, if this is a large scale infrastructure, there's so much of modification of building needed. Maybe that's a cost share they want to do, provide space, and you put this in the budget of this proposal. So that way you have a sense of what is cost shared and what is going into this proposal. So when the support letter comes, the cost share aspects or support elements are obvious because you work with this collaboratively. So I just want to give you that notion of how this is different from the previous approaches, previous seed funding mechanism approaches. So how will this work? So in response to the solicitation, again, I'm thinking as a faculty, I would work with, identify groups of faculty that you coalesce with and define a theme. And as you define a theme for the purposes of crystallizing what this theme is about, it is not another broader statement, but it's defining 2 or 3 key questions as an institution for the long haul that you plan to address, with this being the starting point. And by which I mean the relevance of these 2 to 3 key questions should resonate with national needs. Because your funding possibility rests on the national needs and what the national priorities are. Having a sense of that will be very helpful, aligning that. And again, the end outcome is advancing the state of knowledge so that we can address these questions effectively and be one of the top institutions to be addressing this question. We may not be unique, but we may be one of the top to be able to addressing these questions. So that's the first step. Once you have the vision identified that fits with the strategic plan areas, then doing an assessment of the capabilities of your team and see where the gaps might be. And in order to, this comes from a bit of experience, if I can share, on a large scale center proposals. One of the ways a proposal gets becomes non-competitive in a funding agency perspective is they look at the scope of the project proposed, look at the capability of the team, say, they don't have person X in this particular area, so they can't be competitive. So you fall off. Or they don't have the resources, the infrastructure to do this work. They have all the people, but they can't realistically do this. So large scale solicitations have resource-based assessment. Has the team gelled together? Do they all work together? Or is it just sort of a marriage of convenience? They just came together, and that's seen negatively, as you know. Some of you have written and be succeeded in running center scale activities. So if you really consider those deficits and you look at this area that is aligned with national strategy and aligns with our strategic plan, and building this team for the long haul is the intent. And again, if there's similar group that exists, that's nothing wrong with it, but benchmarking with them to see how realistic we are, that we will be in the top few as we mature in this area. And now this part is important. Now, once you have assembled a group and maybe infrastructure acquisition takes place, you need activities to coalesce the groups together around topics that you want to work with. So you don't want to invest, you really want to identify a very specific demonstration of principle of ideas that will provide you a leg up when you go in for larger scale grants, etc. So those, that is the scope of a bit of seed funding that you could propose to keep this group working together, but not try to solve the problem completely. That would be the entire center itself, a center itself. So that is not the intent. This is to get you seed funding to get the ideas moving. Again, as I said, once you identify gaps in talent and critical infrastructure that you need, then this is collaborative development with the deans, and endorsement should be a natural outcome of that collaborative work. I think that's, and let's see how this will be evaluated is the last slide, and then we're going to open up for questions. The first as you have developed this idea, and then you have in the forum that you're presenting it to the dean's office. The dean's office has input into this, so there is a bit of shaping the idea happens, and maybe a bit of feedback is something that you get. When we get the proposals, depending on the discipline, and we will have expert review, either internal, external, that we will, as appropriate, that we will come up with. Then we will be looking at how you're organized, the appropriateness of the budget, the potential for future funding. These are all things you would have articulated it, but just it has to be convincing. Significance of the problem, alignment with strategic areas, and leadership and qualifications. Leadership qualifications experience is an important element. For this initiative, you will be identifying a lead. And again, the leadership qualification is an important element. Again, thinking through a large-scale center and federal agencies, that's an important element. And then once we go through this process, we will select some for in-person presentation to the leadership. It's not a long presentation. And after that, we will make a recommendation 2 to 5, as mentioned in the solicitation, to the president for funding. And the due dates are given below here. June 30th is the final deadline, and May 31st is the early deadline. And I think end of August announcement is something that we can make. So I just want to stop here. First of all, I want to ask Liz if she wants to add comments or things I might have missed or may want to expand before we jump to Q&A. Liz, please.
No, I think if I can, I think I'm repeating Ram, but this is different than what we've done before. So it is an experiment. The beauty of a call is that you get the energy that comes from a PI or a set of PIs really excited about a project that doesn't come from top-down investments. But at the same time, we're trying to align that energy with these broader strategic goals of the institution. So it's an experiment, and of course, we would love your feedback. I would emphasize, I don't have the large-scale center experience. I know what that means. I guess I would emphasize the 2 examples that Ram gave, which is we have a great team of people in this area, but we are missing this expertise. And if we had this expertise in a faculty hire or 2, we could do something very exciting. That would, of course, have to be coordinated with the relevant deans, since they would have to eventually take over that hiring. Or we have a fantastic team that, if it had this piece of research infrastructure, could do even greater, more important, or the work being done is important, but really it would be a significant step forward for the existing group of researchers across fields, but working in a particular theme, as Ram calls it, this bit of research infrastructure. So I guess those are not, that doesn't exhaust the landscape, but those to me are the 2 things that illustrate what we're thinking about. And it will, and we're happy to facilitate this if we can host conversations among PIs who want to get together. We'd love to do that. It is imagining a kind of process that depends on the excitement and energy of faculty connecting with one another.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Liz. That's a great point. You don't have to have a faculty hire. You don't have to have infrastructure. It depends on what the need is. So it could be an infrastructure. If you have the talent, then infrastructure is fine, and whatnot. That's why the coordination of dean's office is extremely important. And so at this point, let's jump to Q&A. There are several questions here, and there were some that were submitted previously. So let me pull let me get off the screens, stop sharing. Okay, great. Okay, let's look at the question here. Bill is, well, here's a question. Can you say more about UVA strategic areas that this initiative will be aligned with? So the strategic areas, as you know, are democracy, digital technology society, environmental resilience, sustainability, precision medicine, brain and neuroscience. The solicitation does not restrict to one topic or the other, but it's a very it's a STEM centric. So in other words, the solution is STEM centric. So for for example, I could actually think of areas that, including democracy, when you really infuse data analytics and data-based work, there is an opportunity for very STEM-centric work. So it's the STEM-centric with use case, and something else is okay. But precision medicine, brain neuroscience, digital technology society, environmental resilience, sustainability are prime for use cases to come out of. So Liz, do you want to add to this?
Sorry, I'm muted. I think that's right. The research areas are very broad, Bill, as you know, and they were they are sort of vessels into which we're going to pour meaning over this course of the next couple of years, and then the STEM centric. Those are kind of the two criteria, but I would fairly broad possibilities there.
Thank you. And here is a question, Craig Slingleff's question. This does sound like the SIF program grants in the past. Can you clarify how this differs from prior SIF grants? As explained in the webinar, one big difference we can say is you wrote a proposal. If you had done a proposal in the past, you wrote a proposal, you developed a team, proposed ideas that how you will execute it, developed a budget, and went to the dean's office. And of course, dean's office wrote a nice letter, 2-page letter of support, and then it went through a review process, and he executed the idea. Here, and faculty hiring was not. I don't believe faculty hiring was ever initiated through projects in the past, if that is needed. So what this solicitation does is it allows you to look at a broader thematic focus and look at the resources needed for the long haul, and aligning with national priorities and university strategic priorities, and working collaboratively with the dean's office so that the needed resources, that is talent, infrastructure, they're coordinated and available. So in that sense, it is different. That's the primary difference between what we are doing now and what we have done in the past. Let's see. Are there going to be subsequent deadlines? I'm not sure what. I think. I see. Are we going to repeat this solicitation? If that is the question, then this is. There are, as Liz said, there are other opportunities that will come. Not necessarily. This is going to be an ongoing $15 million solicitation year after year. That's not currently in the plan, but there are other opportunities that will come about. This is not the only opportunity. Liz, would you like to add to that one?
I agree with exactly what you said.
Okay, thanks. How to manage cross-school proposals? Okay.
I was just answering that.
Please.
A challenge we realize, it's part of the experiment of what we're doing here. Of course, past proposals for strategic funds have involved cross-school collaborations. My thought is that it first involves the faculty-to-faculty connections, that you're excited about a proposal, and depending on your school, you may then be talking to chairs, or you may be talking to the associate dean for research in your school, and the dean's office. So a challenge, but a potentially productive challenge. And to the extent this could galvanize collaborations that might not have happened without it, that's an exciting thing for the forward motion of knowledge generation here at UVA. So hopefully it will feel worth the work, given the potential exciting possibilities that could come out of those collaborations.
Okay, Thank you, Liz. There's a question here. Will a list with names of reviewers be available in advance? We don't know who the reviewers will be right now. That's why we have the LOI that we request, so that we could use that as a basis for identifying reviewers internally or externally. So we'll have to work through that, because we have experience with limited submission process, etc. But this, depending on the size and scale and the topic, the level of review that is needed, the due diligence that we need to do will vary. So, but I don't believe we will be able to publish there's no standing group of reviewers at this point. So yeah, that's what I can think of right now. Okay, the next one is Mike McCullough asking, would you or others be available to discuss potential projects in the near future to determine whether they're appropriate for this call? And is there a specific application process form for this initial submission? So yeah, the answer is yes. So if you reach out to Cheryl, she can schedule a time with me and Liz, whoever you want to talk with, depending on the scope, what the question is. We'll be happy to help to give you a sense of appropriateness for the call is absolutely, yeah, we can do that. And is there an application form process? In the solicitation, there is a what should be in the proposal. There's a 15-page proposal, and then it breaks it down into headings and the content. So please follow that. There's no form or anything like that. So there's a page limit, and then the content is prescribed in the proposal, in the solicitation, excuse me. Are you looking to build? Okay. Are you open? This Sarah Medley is asking, are you open to funding proposals that build upon existing research and collaborations, or are you looking to build new teams only? And the answer is yes, existing collaborations that you have, if it's aligned with, if for example, precision medicine, if you're working on, let's say you're working on genomics of some specific solid state tumor, and then you have a bunch of people doing that, yeah, we're not asking that you have to start a new research. In fact, if that's even advantageous to have that, that's how you establish that you have credibility in working in that area. And the idea that you propose the thematically large enough, and if you have sufficient evidence, your prior work is actually evidence. So yeah, that's any additions, Liz?
Well, I want to confirm that what I wrote in response was correct, which is there was a question about what's allowed, what's not allowed, talent and infrastructure. And I said, well, Ram's slides will be available, and the specs on the call actually answer some of those questions. The one thing we're trying not to do is basically be a substitute for your next NSF grant, direct funding of research, right? The peer review process of the sponsored reviews agencies we don't want to substitute for that, but talent or infrastructure or the equivalent of seed funding is possible.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So that when you said, no new research group, of course, but we don't want to be your next NIH grant. Like it's not that's not a ideal way to use those funds, because NIH will give you those, hopefully.
Absolutely.
That's the only.
Thank you for that, catching that clarification. If you're working on it, because how do you establish I'm prominent in this area, or our group has got credibility in this area, is you have current research. So my response, just to make sure that what Liz said is clear and we're consistent, that is, it is not to support that research ongoing, but that research is one of the bases to say that we have strength. And then your thematic basis should be broader than your individual capacity of research that you are talking about. So when you do that breadth, the work that you do could be part of it, and you can have a broader theme, and you can bring additional people. So when you have, and one of the elements is your work, that part is okay, but it's not to be funded through this program, as Liz said, just to be clear. And we can take a couple more questions.
I have to go.
Oh,
I have to go. I'm sorry, I have a hard stop now, but thank you all for coming. I put a note in the chat to all that if you have thoughts about how to further galvanize and organize and bring people together, if you're excited about that, I know our offices stand ready to try to facilitate that.
Thanks, Liz. I'll take a couple more questions, but then we'll record all the questions and we will answer that. So I'll take a couple more questions. I'm just gonna, I'm randomly, I'm not selecting, just whatever pops on the screen here. So here's this Heman Shakari. Given the nature of the call and possible large-scale collaborative proposals, is there a limitation on the number of proposals we can participate in? We have not specified a number, so there's no such limitation in participating in proposals. Let's take one more, and then the rest of the questions we can answer. Okay, here's Prominence, Jack Davidson. Jack, question is, Prominence certainly requires a world-class research team, necessary infrastructure, and an aggressive, innovative research agenda. Yes. In your view, does Prominence also require equally world-class, internationally recognized education program to complement the research program? The scope of this solicitation is research, and okay, so here it is. My screen froze. I wasn't sure if you're hearing what I'm saying or not, but I think since Liz is gone, I'm the only talking head on the screen. Okay, so I'm assuming you're hearing me. Jack, the answer to that question is research. This is to move the research in the direction of excellence. So prominence, preeminence, these are keywords of different degree of this excellence we talk about. But excellence, moving in that spectrum and higher. So that's the scope of this. But education programs, building that in simultaneously is not within the intent here. But having said that, having this outstanding research program on a topic where we are, let's say, top 10 in the country on the topic, and impactful work comes out of it, it's inevitable that our primary mode of disseminating and producing future leaders is through education. So this will become a fantastic basis for education. But building that education as part of this proposal that's not within a scope at this point. Let's build the research enterprise. As part of the enterprise, you'll be hiring grad students and whatnot. That's okay, but not the education program itself might add more than what we intended. Okay, let's see. I'll do one more, and then we will stop here. Okay. Yeah, this is a question from somebody. What resources are available from the VPR office or others to conducting assessment of current state of prominence? Current research dollars, publications should be described in a comparative manner. We do have, of course, the office of sponsored programs and so on can do that. It's not going to be by numbers. It's how you justify that in your proposal, what papers that you cite, or how you should demonstrate that you have a strong program or strong activity in the components of the program that is needed to accomplish the theme. So it is left up to the PIs to put together, and we will review what is submitted. Again, there's the common element is the total page limit. So I assume that that should provide some normalization across the board. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here, and I'm assuming that these questions are recorded, and there are a few questions that we will respond on our website. So if there are any further questions, again, if you have any help that we can provide to help you navigate through this, please reach out. Cheryl can help. And once again, I want to thank you for joining, and look forward to this. This is, as Liz said, this is an experiment. If you think about it, there's a strategic plan of the university. There's 5 areas, and the schools, the deans have strategic areas, and they hire faculty. And then as project level, as PIs, well, I can wear a PI hat and say, well, we have research ideas and so on. So if we align all the vectors in the right direction and build collaborations from VPR provost office with the deans, and the deans with the faculty, we can be so aligned that I'm really hopeful that we will build a few thematic elements along the way on this under the umbrella of strategic plans and and we'll move the needle on a few topics in the few years to come. Again, thank you for your hard work, support, and joining me today. Thank you.